Welcome to today's SMA webinar, P&C Claims in the Digital AI Era. This webinar is based on research that SMA has been conducting on the future of claims, and the sponsor of today's webinar is Cloudera. I'm Mark Brading. I'm a partner at SMA, and joining me today will be Monique Hessling, who is Managing Director of Insurance for Cloudera. Thanks for joining, Monique. I have been regularly making the statement that P&C claims will transform more than any other area of the insurance business over the next 5 to 10 years. And whenever I say this, if nothing else, it generates a lively debate about the potential for transformation and what's really likely to happen. But I do sincerely believe that we're at the front edges of some major transformation. So what we'll share with you today are not going to be just the possibilities for the future, but some of the opportunities today. And even today, all you need to do is look at some things that have happened in the last 12 to 18 months in the P&C claims environment. It hasn't been that long ago that Allstate announced they were closing all of their drive-in claims locations, moving to their Quick Photo Claims mobile estimating app, and now they say that 60% of their claims are filed with a cell phone app today, which is pretty remarkable. Just recently, CSAA announced that they're partnering with Owlcam, who has video technology in the vehicle, which can even enable video first notice of loss. And of course, we're all still talking about the famous Lemonade claim that was settled in 3 seconds, and there's debate about that and the circumstances surrounding it. But the truth is, we're moving to more types of claims that will be triggered automatically, and a settlement will take place in a short period of time. And so Monique and I will talk about some of those types of claims as well. And then, if you look back over the last couple of years at some of the major CATs that have occurred, we are now in an era where we're extensively using aerial imagery for CATs, both for planning purposes as well as for estimating damage on individual properties. So make no mistake, there's a lot already happening with technology and claims. There's transformation underway, and we'll just try to discuss a little bit more of what we all see in terms of the future possibilities. Now, let me move to just a little bit of housekeeping first before we get into the meat of the discussion today. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets that you can use. If you have any questions during this webcast, you can click on that Q&A widget, submit your question. We do capture all these questions. We're going to try to answer them, but if we don't get to them, we will promise that we will get back to you after the webinar. A copy of the slide deck is available, and additional materials are available at that green resource list widget at the bottom. And you can expand your slide area by clicking on the 4 arrows at the top right of the slide area as well. The audio for the webinar is through your computer speakers, and if you have any technical difficulty at all, please just click on that help widget. Has a question mark icon down there, and that will cover some of the technical issues. And then finally, we will be producing an on-demand version of this webcast, and it'll be available approximately 1 day after the webcast completes, and so you can share that with your colleagues as well. So let me just kind of talk broadly first about transformation across property casualty insurance, and then we'll move into claims. This is a concept we have been using recently that seems to really resonate with insurance executives, and that is that, big picture, there's these 3 big areas that are driving insurance transformation. First is digital business at the top, and for any of you that have followed our SMA research over the past few years, you'll know that digital transformation and customer experience have been really central to insurer strategies across all lines of business. We have lots of data showing how that has come to the fore. And virtually every insurer has major initiatives in these areas now. And I would say becoming a digital business is really mandatory at this stage, and it is a business strategy. It's not a technology initiative, although certainly lots of technology that underpins and enables it. Then on the bottom left, you have what we call the foundational technologies. So those are your core systems, it's data analytics, it's digital enablement technologies that support a digital business. We've called these foundational because the daily operations of the insurance company are highly dependent on automation in those areas, in policy, billing, claims, underwriting, the systems that support those kinds of things. And really, to be competitive today, the information, the interactions, the transactions that support the full spectrum of customer acquisition and customer servicing really require those kinds of modern technology solutions. And then in the bottom right, you have what we've called transformational technologies. And we've adopted this term because the idea of emerging technologies is, many of those technologies are becoming more mature, what people sometimes call emerging. And we're really a lot more focused on not how long the technology's been along or what the label is, but just which technologies are transforming the insurance business. So certainly AI is in that category, but the IoT and wearables and payments and new payment technologies, a lot of those kinds of things really have transformational capabilities. And as indicated in this Venn diagram, all these things interact. Now let's move into claims. First, I just have kind of the basic claims value chain here. And so one of the reasons that we think there's so much potential for transformation, and in fact there's already so much going on in claims, is because it's a really complicated system, right? Many of these areas, and I know it's quite small here in the value chain, but many of these areas are really kind of whole departments on their own. When you think of, litigation, think of, SIUs for fraud, you think of, FNOL call centers and things like that. These are big operations, and there's lots of connection points here and lots of data. And, if you look at today's kind of traditional ecosystem players, there's already a lot of different types of entities involved in claims. Right? It's the repair shops and the adjusters, it's payment providers, it's tech solutions, and of course it's, those in the medical community and law enforcement, attorneys and contractors and on and on. And then you kind of layer in different lines of business, like a work comp or property versus auto, and you start to get all kinds of complications and sophistications there. And now what we're seeing is even new ecosystem players. The whole ecosystem of claims is expanding. So as we're moving more to this real-time world, we have providers of real-time data and devices and sensors and things like that. New data aggregators or data aggregation solutions are coming into the marketplace, so we can leverage some of that data. Payments is a really hot area. There's a new wave of payment providers that are focusing on claims to support the kind of payment options that are out there in the marketplace that people are asking for. You have the InsurTech movement. You have vehicle manufacturers that are more and more in the picture, especially with the move to autonomous vehicles. And you have a lot of different connected world solution providers in the property space and for farms and for all kinds of businesses. So it's going to get even more complicated, but it just underlies the opportunity for technology and for transformation in the whole claim. So let me talk about digital business and customer experience a little bit, because I think in claims, because of all of these connections and all of the interactions that are taking place here, it's very, very important. And it's also very high impact. I mean, this is claims arena, of course, when claims occur, the customers are likely to either find it a fair and good experience, and it's going to contribute to them renewing, or they're going to be unhappy and they may switch providers, right? Or they may get on their favorite social media site and start complaining about the insurer. So it's a very high impact area. But when we look at digital business, it's really important to think both outside in and inside out. So, from an outside-in perspective, from the customer's perspective, there's all kinds of ways that they're interacting around the gray there, right? And of course, looking for full transparency and digital touch points of choice and personalization and those kinds of things. They want it to be easy to interact with, right? And they want self-service, right? Self-service is a big trend in claims. But in order to accomplish that, you need to really think through the inside-out view, because you need to really be digital inside with your processes, with your data, with your the whole culture to service the needs that are coming in from the outside. Creating those personalized, tailored communications, for instance, across an omni-channel environment, you can't do that unless you have the mechanism inside the enterprise to really support that, right? And it's really especially true in claims, since there's a lot of different parties communicating in the ecosystem, just because of the high value of those touch points. Now, let me just I have two slides talking about the customer experience attributes for claims and how those are changing already. The first one just talks about some of the kind of baseline attributes here, if you look in the middle column. And if we look at, for instance, how do we as an industry communicate today to claimants, to policyholders, to others? And, it's mail, it's phone, it's in person sometimes. But already we're starting to see some high value usages of business texting, for instance, of messaging platforms, the potential for voice assistants, for chatbots, for other kind of interaction modes is high, because that's the way that the world is beginning to communicate, and that's what people expect. Of course, the time is being compressed, right? And the communication patterns are changing. We believe that there'll be a lot more frequent interaction in the real-time world, and people expect real-time response. They expect full transparency, which we don't necessarily have today. And then, importantly, the orientation really, has always been more of a reactive one. We get the first notice of loss or the first report of injury in a work comp case, and then we go to work in claims, and we service the claim, we handle the claim. But we're moving into this very different world that is very, very proactive, and trying to avoid and mitigate. And then if I look at a second set of attributes here, first of all, how is the claim reported in the first place? So today it tends to be, calling into a call center, maybe a web form, maybe some type of mobile. I mean, there's certainly lots of experimentations going on with mobile apps and those kinds of things. Like, as I mentioned, with Allstate, having 60% come in now via a mobile app. And that certainly is their leader, and so certainly very few companies are there. But that's kind of where we are today. And in the future, though, there are just loads of proof of concepts and technologies out there to support, mobile e-self-service, real-time alerts. So we're clearly moving in that direction, and lots of potential. The correspondence, as we mentioned, it's e-delivery, it's omni-channel, mobile first. Not necessarily just sending out a letter, or an email. And then payments, let's face it, I mean, the vast majority of payments in the claims environment today are either paper checks or maybe ACH type payments. But we're moving to more real-time payments with customer choice, with digital currency, debit card payments, all kinds of options there. So at this stage, I'd like to turn it over to Monique to talk about data and analytics in claims, because it's really foundational, and there's a vital role that the data and analytics play in the transformation of claims in the digital era.
Thank you very much, Mark. And just to reiterate what you said, I think you made some excellent points around the complexity of the claims process. It touches on an awful lot of functions within an insurance carrier and the external world. The ever-changing expectations of our customers, of the experience that they are expecting from us, as well as the fact that technology can support and should support and underpin, the changing world that we find ourselves in. So I want to dive into that a little bit deeper. Let me see where we are. Here we are. If you look, for example, as you mentioned earlier, a transformative technology or approach like AI, we see a shift in how that's being deployed in insurance companies, and then specifically around the claims process here. And not too long ago, when we were talking about AI, we were very enthusiastic and proud of ourselves that we engaged in text mining and rules engines-driven intelligence, programmed chatbots, you brought them up earlier, expert systems, and process mining. And we see in Cloudera that a vast majority of the insurance companies made a lot of progress, especially around text mining and chatbots to a degree. But there is more to do beyond where we are. We came a long way, but there is more to do in the space of AI than mining text and programming chatbots. So where we see the market moving to right now is truly progress on the path towards deep learning, machine-augmented deep learning. And where we see the market in claims specifically investing right now is in two areas of the ones that we listed on this slide. One is around image and vision. You brought it up, especially around catastrophes and things in cars. We see companies utilize images and videos and tapes to, first of all, assess the claims, but also to value the claim. For example, there is a company that's comparing pictures of dings and scratches in cars, analyzes what has been paid out on those claims, and uses that as a benchmark for claims going forward. Fully automated, no human intervention for now. So those are sort of the things that we start seeing in this new and changing world around claims management, supported by data and analytics. So if we go to the next one, our ecosystem is changing. Mark pointed that out. And also our data sources are changing. For every function within an insurance company, we have more and different types, quantities, and accessibility of data than we ever had before. And what we see in claims primarily, big oil and gas companies, as well as mines, as well as construction, start increasingly using seismic data, geological data. We're also seeing a lot of drone information coming in. We're seeing social media data being utilized to augment claims handling or customer experience. We see pictures, we see video, we see audio. And a really interesting use case is on two natural catastrophes in the United States over the last years. After everything was settled down and all the people were being helped and all the property was being assessed, there were some studies on who had more accurate information. The formal lines of communication over the government, over insurers, over adjusters, or an analysis of social media platforms. And it turned out that in both cases, social media platforms had faster and equally accurate information collectively generated than the more formal communication vehicles and channels. So it's interesting to see how not only our insurers' approach towards data is changing, but also what our clients, our customers, can have access to and are utilizing to either help us or to judge us if we're doing a good job or not in it. So where can advanced analytics and AI play in the insurance industry? Well, they can play everywhere. They can play in underwriting, in claims, in marketing, in sales. Claims here is listed in the right upper corner. And what I just pointed out, what happens is, for example, carriers use more and more picture recognition, picture comparison, and learnings out of visual files of historical claims to help assess new claims and losses better and faster. We also see work around intelligent loss control, primarily in the automotive space and in some of the property-related fields. And we see a lot of work in frequency, severity, and reserve projection estimation. That is obviously a very important part of the whole claims process that we're not always, as practitioners, putting a lot of attention to and in, but reporting and reserving has an enormously big impact on the results of an insurance company. It tends to be a very retroactive, actuarially driven process, and the mass amount of data that we have now and the analytics that we can run on them, especially in a more unstructured environment such as a data lake on-prem or in the cloud, we see increasing movement towards the cloud, will help carriers reserve better and make adjustments to their reserves faster and based on better data, which is of critical importance in the industry. And with that, Mark and I are going to talk a little bit about future transformation discussion topics. Right, Mark? Back to you.
Right. So let's just chat about this a little, Monique, because I think there's a number of areas here where, big topic areas where we see transformation in possibilities in claims. So maybe you can kind of kick off with some ideas around this whole shift to a proactive real-time world. What does that mean for claims?
Yeah, sure. You brought up first notice of loss earlier, and that is one area where we see the digital evolution, as we tend to call it, really start having an impact. People are used by now on their cell phone or other devices, have real-time information on their bank, on their health, on the news, of course, on their emails, and they start expecting that in insurance transactions too. And one area where we do see it in is first notice of loss. People upload a picture and do not want to have to deal with the enormous amount of paperwork that we used to have to deal with in case of a relatively straightforward loss, right? So that is one area where we see it a lot. You mentioned earlier real-time updates or staying informed on the process. That's another area where we see customers becoming much more demanding, and rightfully so, than they ever have been. People do not want to get a standard message every week saying, we're working on your claim, we'll let you know when we have something of interest to share with you. They want to check when they feel like, over whatever vehicle that they feel like, at any point in time that they feel like. They want to be able to quickly check what the status is, where in the process their claims is from being handled, and what they need to do, if anything, to speed something up or to get more information.
Yeah, great examples, and a couple that I could add to that. I think when you start to look at how we're instrumenting many things that we're insuring, or really, almost anything that we are insuring could be instrumented or have sensors on it. But that it raises a lot of opportunities, but also questions. So, if I've got sensors in my home and I'm traveling and I get an alert that there's something wrong with the sump pump, or there's a pipe that might be frozen or something like that, then you have to ask, well, what do you do with that alert? And should that alert be going to your agent, or should it be going to the insurance company, or should it go directly to a preferred provider as part of a repair network that an insurer has, right? And you can think of those kinds of real-time examples across all kinds of different things that we insure, where it's great to get the information that there's something going on and we have to be proactive, but now we have to rethink the claims response to that. So I think that there's this whole area is going to really change claims a lot over the next decade or so. The second one that we want to talk about is the evolution of the workforce, and I'll start off with a couple of ideas there. Of course, as we talk about AI and automation, the first thing that comes to many people's minds is, what is this going to mean in terms of people's jobs, of claim adjusters, of claim professionals? And there's a natural concern there for job loss, right? Whether it's through simple technologies like robotic process automation to automate tasks, or sophisticated AI to do the automated damage assessment that you were talking about, Monique. But I guess my thought is that we're entering an era where there's many seasoned professionals in claims that are going to be retiring anyway over the next 5 to 10 years, and so it may be an opportunity to kind of find the right balance there, where we leverage technology and we raise the level of and importance of the claim professionals that are there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I concur with you. I also do think, we mentioned it earlier, that if ever, at least not now, is the point in time that we have fully automated processes that deal with complex situations, such as claims quite easily can be, without any human expertise on top of it, right? So I see the claims process quite often being broken out in 3 swim lanes, pretty much straightforward processing, which frankly most humans do not want to have to deal with because it's very repetitive effort. Then in the middle, you have the claims that need a little bit of human interaction or human expertise or supervision to make sure that everything is going as it should. And then the last one is truly complex situations that require human expertise that for now machines have not proven to be perfect at, right? So I think for the next couple of years, we truly need, as many claims experts as ever, maybe even more. I read an article this morning, and I was talking to an insurance carrier about, I think the title of the article was something like, "The robots will not take all your jobs," right? I think people get scared and jobs will change, but personally, I believe that they will change for the better. I think we will do more interesting work, and all the repetitive, tedious tasks hopefully can be automated away. That's where I am on it, Mark.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Well, let's talk about some of the new types of products and coverages that are being introduced in the market, particularly by some of the insurtechs, but often partnering with insurers and reinsurers. What are some of those types of things, and what do they mean for claims?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we see is a movement towards much more specific, customized coverages based on location, on time and exposure, or on insured, right? So we see, because of data and analytics and what we all can do, we see, coverages for a specific little mini event. You don't have to buy a full travel insurance anymore. You can buy a very small part for a very small part of your travel, only your bike ride, for example, only your flight, only for you, not for your husband and your children. So there is an enormous amount of coverage starting to come out for micro events, micro coverages, micro duration. And a prime example of that is an ocean marine, surprisingly so, coverage that enables ocean marine underwriters to look at a ship's voyage and only cover the piece that they are comfortable with. And that can either be a part of the actual physical voyage, so only, for example, the part crossing the Atlantic or crossing the North Sea, or being docked in New York Harbor, or being docked in Rotterdam, or only insure a small subset of the cargo that is on the ship. Well, nobody, at least so I assume nobody would have thought 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago that first of all, we would ever be able to manage risks and exposures and price them at that detailed level, but also that there would be a market, a very quickly growing market for breaking up risks and exposures to that level of detail and subcomponents. So I think that is a very interesting development, Mark. Are you seeing similar things?
Yeah, I'm seeing similar things, and what I find really interesting is that you're starting to see, some leaders in insurance talking about coverage, more and more talking about coverage gaps and uninsured risks, and even to the point where some are saying, we actually only cover 10 or 20% of the insurable risks in the world, right? And it's because of in the past, with the way our processes and our technology were set up, it really wasn't possible to be that, that real time and that finite and that unique in covering certain things. But, there's a lot of risks in the world, and now we can cover things, reach customers to sell, we can settle from a claim standpoint very efficiently and in automated ways, and so it opens up this avenue of all kinds of new things that insurers could go after as an industry. So even in an era where some worry about us engineering away risks with autonomous vehicles and with sensors in homes and factories and things, there's still plenty of new opportunity, and of course, all of anything that's covered is going to have claims at some point, but it will start to change the nature of some of the ways that claims has to respond. And then let me just take a stab at the fourth bullet there, the implications of transformational tech. I think we've kind of been talking about those throughout, but looking across every line of business, there's plenty of examples. I'll just pick out one. If I take a look at workers' compensation, for instance, there's so much energy right now by work comp insurers in thinking through the possibilities of wearables and artificial intelligence and sensors on job sites or on work sites of various kinds, because being proactive again and using technology to create safer work environments, is certainly great potential there. And then on the flip side of it, I guess if I could call it that, when a worker is injured, whatever their occupation is, the technology is there to help identify the best treatment plans and your adherence to those, and to just help get that worker back to work sooner, which is the whole objective of those activities. So, and you can take examples like that across any line of business. I think there's lots of possibility for technology to transform the way claims are done. Yeah,
if you would look a couple of years ago, sometimes carriers wanted to engage in projects or initiatives, and the technology was just not totally there yet. So for a while around data and analytics, technology was a little bit of a stumble over business goals and business visions and strategies. Every time I talk to an insurer nowadays, that's not the case anymore, right? The technology is there. We just need to find the best ways to utilize it, to help our customers and to make the company more efficient, right?
All right, great. Well, what I'd like to do is move on to really a call to action, or the areas that we think insurers should focus on for claims, and then we'll take some questions after that. And just looking at this graphic here, I guess I'll start at the bottom. This is certainly kind of general, but I think it's useful to think in terms of these categories. And first is to just look at strategy and rethink your claim strategies. And by the way, there's a lot of activity we at SMA have going on with insurers right now. Many are saying it's time to, we've completed our core systems modernization for our claims system, or we're almost done with that. We recognize the world's changing. How do we need to position for the future? How do we need to think differently about our strategy, short, mid, and long-term strategy for claims? So that's where I would start. Secondly, and kind of in conjunction with that, is just innovation. Innovation has to be part of that thinking, and it also has to be part of the claims culture, right? So as that workforce evolves, as things change, there I think needs to be a new spirit or a different kind of thinking in claims itself as to the kind of role that claims organizations have. So that also, kind of drives the talent, right? Because as Monique and I both have talked about, the human element is going to be more important, if anything, as time goes on, right? Because the environment continues to change. There's many complex claims. Leveraging technologies in the right way, you need highly skilled people to recruit and to retain those people. So focusing on talent for the claims area is going to be really important. Next is platforms, right? There's lots of talk about platforms these days, but there are hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of technology solutions and providers out there that have capabilities for claims, and certainly many of those have very, very good solutions. But you do have to have some kind of foundational platforms, for your core administrative systems, for your damage estimating systems, for your customer communications and some of those areas. You need kind of more broad-based platforms, but then are architected in a way that you can connect in other point solutions that deliver value. And then along those lines, the final one at the top is partnerships. I really think we're in an era where partnerships are more important than ever. In claims organizations are pretty used to partnering. It's part of the ecosystem that we've talked about, different partners, but I think that claims organizations will need the ability to even more dynamically partner and find, and plug in quickly new capabilities from some partners. So at this point, if you have questions, again, please submit them. We'll take some of the questions that we have now. And so let's see. The first question I'm going to ask this to you, Monique. With new players in the claims ecosystem, how do you see the new data sources they bring being used in claims and in customer service processes?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We touched at it at a high level earlier. You have a slide on it, Mark, I believe, too. But what we see is that companies start combining their classical structured data sources that come out of the claims processes in a repository such as a data lake augmented with unstructured, and start utilizing primarily text analysis. We spoke about that on the AI slide, right? Text analysis first to come up with trends to service clients better in their claims processes. They also start using pictures and videos to actually manage the claims. And a really interesting one and fairly new data source is voice analytics. And on the claims side, companies tend to start with what they call sentiment analysis. So they analyze voice tapes, and they learn from words and intonation people use to express their happiness, sadness, anger, and some other emotions. And that enables the carrier to service their clients better, but also to route clients to a different resource, a different human, if they feel the client would be better suited with a different approach at that time. That's a very interesting one, I think.
All right. There's another question that I'll take a first stab at, which is what analytical capabilities do you see mostly being prioritized in the claims function? So the one point I want to make is, it's really easy to get excited about machine learning and all the advanced capabilities, and rightly so. There's tremendous potential there. But also, just don't forget about basic business intelligence, because capabilities are evolving there too, and it's very important to improve those capabilities to be more timely, to be more visual, to provide more flexibility for understanding, the current state of activity of individual claims and of claims in the aggregate. So that whole area, I think, is still quite important, and I would focus there. Not to the exclusion of the more advanced capabilities, but certainly that's one thing that I think is still happening.
Mm-hmm. Also on using the data that you have, right, along the same lines as you were just describing, I get questions which additional sources of data companies should start utilizing or ingressing. And really, there is an awful lot to gain by using what we already have.
Right. So let me follow up with another question that's kind of related. And you've talked about this a little bit, but unstructured data. What's happening with unstructured data? Is there true value there, or is that a gimmick?
Mm-hmm. It's an excellent question, and the jury is probably to a degree still out. What we see is, yes, there is value, but it's a very specific, quite often very specific use case driven, and companies take different approaches, right? They either embark on a path towards let's just ingress a lot of unstructured data that we already have somewhere and see what we can learn from it and see what we can utilize. And sometimes they find really cool and valuable nuggets. The other school of thought is, let's do a use case around claims. For example, I mentioned my pictures of prior losses and scratches and damages, and utilize those, analyze those to quickly judge how much should be paid on a specific claim. That is a very specific use case for which ROIs are normally easier to calculate than in my first example. So we see the second one getting more traction quicker, the second type of use cases. So yes, there is value in unstructured data. It's not a gimmick, but it needs to be underpinned by a use case.
Okay, good. And one final question that has to do with, this question says, can you talk a little bit about cloud adoption in the insurance claims space? And it so happens that at SMA we actually have some specific data points on this. We've recently done a survey, and we ask for specific areas of the business about cloud adoption. So in claims, for personal lines, 64% of insurers said they're investing in cloud computing for their claim solutions, and in commercial lines it was 59%. So I think I don't know if I would say the debate about cloud computing is over, but there certainly is a big movement across insurance to capitalize on capabilities in the cloud, and claim systems of various kinds are being deployed there. So I think that there's lots of activity there, and still we'll see even further uptake. So I'm just going to close by mentioning that we also did produce a white paper on P&C claims in the digital AI era that was sponsored by Cloudera along with Quadient. That white paper is available. You can download it from the console here, or you can reach out to either Monique or myself for the white paper, or if you have any other questions that you think of after the webinar. And if we didn't get to your question, again, we will make sure we follow up afterward to do our best to answer that question. So I'd like just finally once again to thank our sponsor, Cloudera, for participating and sponsoring, and mention that the webinar replay will be available about one day after we complete the webinar here, and then you can get a link to share with your colleagues. So thanks for listening today, and I hope you found value. Good luck in your transformation of claims.